Jake Martinez was having the worst Monday of his life, and it wasn't even noon yet. First, his coffee maker exploded. Literally exploded, sending hot caffeine and metal shrapnel across his tiny apartment kitchen. Then his boss called to inform him that the quarterly reports he'd spent 3 weeks perfecting had somehow vanished from the company servers. And now, as he sat in traffic that hadn't moved in 20 minutes, his phone was buzzing with 17 missed calls from his father. His dad never called 17 times. Hell, his dad barely called once a month. Jake finally pulled over at a gas station and dialed back, expecting to hear about another one of his father's get-rich-quick schemes, or maybe news that he'd accidentally set the garage on fire again. What he got instead made him question his sanity. "Jake, thank God you called back. Listen, son, I need you to sit down for this. Dad, I'm in my car. I'm already sitting. Good, good. Okay, so you know how I've been working on those radio telescope modifications in the backyard?" Jake rubbed his temples. Of course, this was about his father's hobby. Ever since retiring from his job as an electrical engineer, his dad had become obsessed with SETI projects, building increasingly elaborate antenna arrays that made their suburban home look like a NASA facility. The neighbors had complained multiple times, "Yeah, Dad, the ones that make our house look like we're trying to contact Mars." Well, funny you should mention Mars, because it turns out I wasn't contacting Mars. I was contacting something much, much farther away. Jake waited for the punchline. His father had a terrible sense of humor, but this seemed elaborate even for him. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I made contact, Jake, real contact, with aliens. And, there's been a bit of a misunderstanding." The line went quiet except for the sound of 18-wheelers rumbling past the gas station. Jake watched a man in a cowboy hat struggle to figure out how the credit card reader worked at the pump across from him. "Aliens," Jake repeated flatly. "Yes, the Zilithian Empire, to be specific. Very advanced civilization. Apparently, they've been monitoring our radio signals for decades. My modifications created some kind of quantum entanglement communication bridge. I still don't fully understand the science, but Dad, stop. Just stop." Jake could feel a headache building behind his eyes. "Are you feeling okay? Have you been taking your blood pressure medication?" "I'm fine, Jake. Better than fine, actually. The aliens are very impressed with human ingenuity. Turns out my antenna design accidentally solved some kind of faster-than-light communication problem they've been working on for centuries." Jake looked at his reflection in the car's side mirror. He looked tired. He looked like a man whose father was having some kind of breakdown. "Okay, let's say for a moment that this is real. What does this have to do with me?" "Well, that's where things get a bit complicated. You see, in Zilithian culture, when someone provides a significant technological advancement to their empire, it's considered a great honor. They wanted to reward me, and I may have gotten a bit carried away during the negotiations." "What kind of negotiations?" "Trade negotiations, cultural exchange programs, that sort of thing. They're very interested in human music, apparently. Did you know that our concept of harmony is completely unique in the galaxy? They've never heard anything like it." Jake found himself wondering if there was a polite way to have your father committed for psychiatric evaluation. "Dad, I really think you should talk to Dr. Peterson. Maybe adjust your medications." "Jake, I'm sending you a video file right now. Check your email." Against his better judgment, Jake opened his email app. There was indeed a new message from his father, with a video attachment labeled proof. He almost deleted it, but something in his father's voice made him hesitate. He clicked play. The video was shaky, clearly shot on his father's ancient phone, but what it showed made Jake's blood run cold. His father's backyard, familiar down to the mismatched lawn chairs and the broken bird bath, but now dominated by what could only be described as a spacecraft. It was silver and blue with lines that seemed to flow like water, and it was definitely not from Earth. Standing next to his father was a figure in what looked like ceremonial robes, tall and elegant with skin that shimmered like pearls. The being was clearly not human, but somehow beautiful in a way that made Jake's brain struggle to process what he was seeing. "As you can see," his father's voice came through the phone speaker, "my new friends are very real. Say hello to Ambassador Viridian." The alien turned toward the camera and spoke in perfect unaccented English. "Greetings, Jake Martinez. Your father has told us much about you. We look forward to meeting you in person." Jake nearly dropped his phone. "Dad," he said slowly, "please tell me this is some kind of elaborate joke." "No joke, son. And here's the thing. They're coming back tomorrow. With Princess Lyrale. She's the Emperor's daughter and she's very excited to meet you. Why would an alien princess want to meet me? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Too long, Dad? Well, you see, during the cultural exchange discussions, they were very interested in human bonding rituals. Marriage customs, specifically. And when they offered to formalize our alliance through a traditional union ceremony, I may have mentioned that I had a son who was single and looking for someone special. Jake felt the world tilt sideways. You did what? I was trying to be diplomatic. They seemed so pleased by the idea. And you're always complaining about not finding the right woman. I thought, what's the harm in a cultural exchange? Dad! Before you get upset, let me just say that Princess Lyrale is supposed to be incredibly intelligent and beautiful. And according to Ambassador Viridian, she's very interested in human culture. She's been studying our languages and customs for months. Jake stared at the video still playing on his phone, showing his father chatting casually with a being from another world. This was not happening. This could not be happening. Are you telling me that you accidentally engaged me to an alien princess? I wouldn't say accidentally. More like diplomatically arranged a potential meeting between two young people from different cultures who might find they have things in common. Dad! She arrives tomorrow at 3 p.m. I think you should probably call in sick to work. Jake spent the entire night alternating between panic attacks and researching alien abduction stories online, desperately hoping to find evidence that his father had finally snapped. By sunrise, he'd consumed enough coffee to power a small city and developed a nervous twitch in his left eye. He called in sick to work, which wasn't entirely a lie since the stress had given him what felt like the flu. Then he drove to his father's house hoping against hope that the spaceship would be gone and his dad would sheepishly admit to an elaborate prank. Instead, he found his father in the garage surrounded by alien technology. Oh good, you're here early, his dad said, not looking up from what appeared to be a handheld device covered in symbols that hurt Jake's eyes to look at directly. Ambassador Viridian dropped off a translation matrix this morning. Fascinating technology, really. It creates a neural link that allows real-time language conversion. Jake stood in the doorway, mouth agape. The garage, which yesterday had been full of his father's usual electronic debris, now looked like mission control at NASA. Holographic displays showed star charts. Streams of alien text scrolled across floating screens, and in the corner sat a device that was definitely not from Radio Shack. This is real, Jake whispered. Very real, his father confirmed, finally looking up. And son, I need to prepare you for something. The princess isn't just coming for a casual meet and greet. In Zilithian culture, when a marriage arrangement is suggested, it's considered a binding preliminary contract. Jake felt his knees go weak. What does that mean exactly? It means that unless either party formally rejects the arrangement, you're essentially engaged. And Jake, rejection would be considered a massive diplomatic insult, the kind that could end peaceful first contact between our species. So I'm being held hostage by intergalactic politics? Think of it more as being given an incredible opportunity to be Earth's first ambassador to an advanced alien civilization. Jake slumped against the doorframe. Dad, I can't even maintain a relationship with a human woman. My last girlfriend broke up with me because I forgot to text her back for 3 days. How am I supposed to date an alien princess? That's actually another thing we need to discuss. His father picked up what looked like a crystal tablet. I've been reading about Zilithian customs. They're a very formal society, but they value honesty and direct communication above all else. No games, no hidden meanings, no emotional manipulation. Everything is straightforward. That actually sounds refreshing, Jake admitted. There's more. Zilithians bond for life. Once they choose a partner, that's it. No divorce, no breaking up, no it's complicated status updates. They also live for about 800 years. Jake's eye twitch intensified. 800 years? The good news is that their medical technology can extend human lifespan significantly. The bad news is that if you two hit it off, you're looking at a very long marriage. Before Jake could process this information fully, the air in the backyard began to shimmer. The same silver and blue spacecraft from the video materialized, landing silently on his father's lawn and completely flattening his mother's rose garden. They're early, his father noted, checking his watch. Punctuality is considered a virtue in their culture. That's a good sign. A good sign for what? Dad, I'm not ready for this. I'm wearing yesterday's clothes and I haven't showered and I have no idea how to talk to an alien princess. Just be yourself, Jake. Remember, she's probably just as nervous as you are. The spacecraft's door opened with a sound like wind chimes. An Ambassador Viridian stepped out, followed by two other figures in elaborate robes. Jake recognized the ambassador from the video, but seeing the alien in person was completely different. Viridian was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that shifted between pearl white and pale blue depending on the light. Their features were humanoid but refined, as if someone had taken the concept of human beauty and perfected it. Richard Martinez, Viridian said, approaching Jake's father with what might have been a smile. Your offspring has arrived. Yes, this is my son Jake. Jake, meet Ambassador Viridian. Jake stepped forward awkwardly and offered his hand. Viridian stared at it for a moment before cautiously taking it. Their skin was warm and felt surprisingly normal. A pleasure, Viridian said. The princess is completing her preparation rituals. She will join us momentarily. Preparation rituals? Jake asked nervously. Meditation primarily. Meeting one's potential life bond is considered a sacred moment in our culture. She wishes to be fully present for the experience. One of the other aliens stepped forward. This one was smaller than Viridian, with darker blue skin and intricate silver markings that seemed to move across their face. I am Scholar Zeph, they said. I have been studying human customs in preparation for this meeting. I understand that gift-giving is important in your courtship rituals. Scholar Zeph handed Jake a small crystalline object that pulsed with soft light. This is a memory crystal from the princess's homeworld. It contains sensory recordings of her favorite places. Jake took the crystal, which was warm and seemed to vibrate with energy. Suddenly his mind was filled with images. Towering cities of living light, forests where the trees sang in harmony, oceans that sparkled with bioluminescent life. The beauty of it brought tears to his eyes. That's incredible, he breathed. The princess hopes you will share similar memories of Earth with her, Scholar Zeph explained. She is particularly interested in your music and literature. I mostly listen to classic rock and read science fiction, Jake said weakly. Fascinating, Scholar Zeph said, making notes on a floating holographic pad. She will be delighted. The spacecraft's door chimed again and Jake's heart stopped. Princess Lyrelei stepped out, and Jake understood immediately why his father had thought this might work out. She was stunning, but not in the intimidating way he'd expected. She was tall like the other Zilithians, but more delicately built, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her hair, if it could be called hair, flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes were the deep purple of twilight. But what struck Jake most was her expression. She looked as nervous as he felt. Greetings, Jake Martinez, she said, her voice like music. I am Lyrelei. Your father has told my people many wonderful things about you. Hi, Jake managed. Nice to meet you. I have to say you're not what I expected when Dad said I was meeting an alien princess. Lyrelei tilted her head, a gesture that seemed both alien and endearingly familiar. What did you expect? Honestly? Green skin, tentacles, maybe some scary teeth? Lyrelei made a sound that took Jake a moment to recognize as laughter. I am sorry to disappoint you, though I should mention that I do have what you might consider scary teeth. She smiled, revealing teeth that were indeed sharp and definitely carnivorous, but somehow on her they looked elegant rather than frightening. I think I can work with that, Jake said, and for the first time since this whole thing started, he meant it. The next few hours passed like a fever dream. Jake found himself sitting in his father's living room, drinking tea that tasted like starlight and listening to Princess Lyrelei explain the political complexities of a galactic empire that spanned 47 star systems. The thing you must understand about Zilithian society, she said, her purple eyes focused intently on Jake's face, is that we value innovation above all else. Your father's antenna design solved a communication problem that has plagued our empire for 3 centuries. In our culture, such a contribution makes him a hero. Jake glanced at his father, who was beaming with pride while Scholar Zeph recorded everything on their holographic device. But why marriage? Jake asked. I mean, couldn't you just give him a medal or something? Lyrelei exchanged what might have been an amused look with Ambassador Viridian. Our empire has encountered 73 different intelligent species in the galaxy. Of those, only 12 have proven compatible with our social structures. Your species shows remarkable promise. What kind of promise? Adaptability, creativity, emotional resilience. Most species we encounter are either too rigid in their thinking or too chaotic to maintain stable relationships. Humans seem to find a balance between innovation and stability that we find attractive. Jake noticed that Lyralay's skin seemed to shift color slightly when she said the word attractive, taking on a warmer hue. "So this is like a diplomatic test run?" he asked. "In a sense, yes. If we prove compatible, it would open the door for broader cultural and technological exchange between our peoples. If not," she paused delicately, "if not what?" Ambassador Viridian cleared their throat. "If the bonding proves unsuccessful, the Empire would likely classify humanity as a protected but isolated species. No further contact would be permitted." "So no pressure or anything," Jake muttered. "I should probably mention," Lyralay said softly, "that I volunteered for this arrangement." Jake looked up in surprise. "You volunteered?" "I have been studying your species for 2 of your years. Your literature, your music, your scientific achievements. I find human culture fascinating. When the opportunity arose to meet a human personally, I requested to be considered. What do you find fascinating about us?" Lyralay was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Your capacity for growth. Most species we encounter reach a certain level of development and then stagnate. You humans never stop reaching for something more. Even in your entertainment, your stories are always about becoming better than you were before." Jake thought about this. "I guess I never really thought about it that way." "Also," Lyralee added with what Jake was learning to recognize as a smile, "your music is extraordinary. We have nothing like it. The way you layer different sounds to create emotional resonance is completely unique in the galaxy. What kind of music do you like?" "I have been particularly drawn to what you call classical and jazz. The mathematical complexity combined with emotional expression is beautiful, though I confess I do not understand your rock music." Jake grinned. "Well, if we're going to do this cultural exchange thing, I should probably start with the basics. Dad, do you still have Mom's old stereo system?" 20 minutes later, Jake was watching an alien princess experience Led Zeppelin for the first time. Her reaction was not what he'd expected. "This is..." Lyralay paused, her skin shifting through several colors rapidly. "It's very intense. The emotional content is overwhelming." "That's kind of the point," Jake explained. "Rock music is meant to be felt as much as heard. I understand why it might be appealing, but it seems very chaotic. Try this instead." Jake switched to something gentler, one of his mother's favorite songs. The soft melody filled the room and he watched Lyralee's expression change. "This is better," she said, closing her eyes. "There is structure here, but also freedom within that structure." "That's a pretty good description of jazz," Jake said. When Lyralee opened her eyes, they seemed to glow slightly. "Would you be willing to teach me more about your music?" "I'd like that," Jake found himself saying and realized he meant it. Ambassador Viridian made a note on their device. "The preliminary compatibility assessment is proceeding well. Princess, perhaps you would like to demonstrate some aspects of Zilithian culture for Jake?" Lyralay stood gracefully and walked to the center of the room. She placed her hands together in front of her chest and began to sing. Jake had heard beautiful singing before, but this was something else entirely. Lyralay's voice seemed to resonate on frequencies that Jake felt in his bones. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, like whale song mixed with cathedral bells, and it made his heart ache with emotions he couldn't name. As she sang, the air around her began to shimmer, and Jake realized he was seeing something impossible. The light in the room was bending around her, creating patterns of color and shadow that danced in time with the music. Light manipulation is a basic Zilithian ability, Scholar Zeph explained quietly. It is often combined with vocal expression for emotional communication. When Lyralay finished, Jake found himself wiping tears from his eyes. "That was incredible," he said. "What was it about?" "It is a traditional song about the search for one's life bond," Lyralay said, her skin now a soft golden hue. "It tells the story of 2 stars that circle each other for eons before finally finding the perfect orbital distance." "That's beautiful," Jake said. "I am glad you think so," Lyralay replied. "In our culture, sharing this song with someone is considered a declaration of serious intent." Jake felt his cheeks reddening. "Oh, should I be worried about the diplomatic implications of saying I liked it?" Lyralay laughed, that musical sound that was becoming familiar. "No, Jake Martinez. You should be pleased that I chose to share it with you." Ambassador Viridian stood up. "Perhaps we should discuss the practical aspects of this arrangement." If you two decide to proceed, there would be certain requirements. What kind of requirements? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Cultural education for both of you, language learning, basic diplomatic training, and of course you would need to spend time on Zilithia to understand our society. How much time? The traditional courtship period is one of your years. Jake looked at Lyrelai, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. And if, after a year, we decide this isn't working? Then you would part as friends and both our peoples would benefit from the cultural exchange, Ambassador Viridian said. Though I should mention that in 3,000 years of Zilithian recorded history, no arranged compatibility assessment has ever ended in rejection. No pressure, Jake repeated weakly. Lyrelai moved closer to him. Jake, may I ask you something personal? Sure. In your heart, what do you truly want from life? Jake considered the question seriously. I want to matter. I want to do something that makes a difference. Most days I feel like I'm just going through the motions, you know? Like I'm waiting for my real life to start. Lyrelai nodded slowly. I understand this feeling. On Zilithia, I am the 7th daughter of the Emperor. I am well educated and well trained, but I have never done anything of importance. This mission is my chance to be more than just a princess. Jake looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he recognized. She wasn't just beautiful and alien and intimidating. She was lonely just like he was. So what do you say, Jake Martinez? Lyrelai asked. Would you like to try becoming more than we are together? 3 weeks later, Jake was living in what had to be the strangest situation in human history. Half his time was spent in intensive alien language and culture classes conducted by Scholar Zeph in his father's garage, which had been converted into something resembling a small university. The other half was spent getting to know Lyrelai, who had taken up residence in the guest bedroom and was adapting to human life with an enthusiasm that was both charming and terrifying. Jake, she called from the kitchen one morning, I believe I may have broken your coffee machine again. Jake rushed downstairs to find the kitchen filled with steam and what appeared to be coffee foam covering every surface. Lyrelai stood in the middle of it all, her silver hair somehow perfectly clean despite the chaos around her. What happened? He asked, trying not to laugh. I attempted to modify the brewing process to achieve optimal flavor extraction, she said, looking embarrassed. I may have underestimated the pressure requirements. Jake looked at the coffee machine, which was now making a sound like a dying whale. Yeah, I can see that. Let me show you the secret to human coffee making. Which is? Keep it simple. He pulled out his backup French press. Sometimes the old ways work best. As he demonstrated the simple process, Lyrelai watched intently, as if memorizing every movement. Your species has many such elegant solutions, she observed. Simple tools that accomplish complex tasks. Our technology tends toward elaborate efficiency. This is more peaceful. That's one way to put it, Jake said, handing her a cup of properly brewed coffee. She took a sip and made a face. Still bitter. You'll get used to it. Or we can add sugar. Sugar makes it more palatable, but I do not understand why you consume something that requires modification to be enjoyable. Sometimes the things worth having require a little effort to appreciate. Lyrelai gave him a look that suggested she understood he wasn't just talking about coffee. Over the past 3 weeks, Jake had learned that Lyrelai was incredibly intelligent, genuinely curious about everything human, and possessed a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard regularly. She was also completely hopeless at human technology, despite being able to operate devices that seemed like magic to him. The compatibility assessment reports are quite positive, Scholar Zeph announced, entering the kitchen with their usual armload of floating data tablets. Both subjects are showing excellent adaptation rates. We're not subjects, Jake protested. We're people trying to figure out if we like each other. Of course, Scholar Zeph said, making a note. Human preference for informal relationship terminology. Noted. Lyrelai laughed. Zeph, you have been studying our interactions for weeks. What is your professional opinion? Scholar Zeph consulted their tablets. Based on biometric analysis, behavioral observation, and psychological compatibility matrices, I would estimate a 78% probability of successful long-term bonding. What about the other 22%? Jake asked. Cultural adjustment difficulties primarily. Princess Lyrelai has adapted well to human customs, but Jake has yet to experience Zilithian society. The transition can be challenging for humans. Challenging how? Lyrelai and Scholar Zeph exchanged a look. Perhaps it would be better to show you, Lyrelai said. If you are willing, we could visit my homeworld for a brief period, just a few days. Jake felt his stomach drop. Like, actually, go to an alien planet? The translation would be more accurately rendered as dimensional space, but yes, my home. Is it safe for humans? Completely safe, Scholar Zeph assured him. Though the sensory experience may be overwhelming initially, your brain will need time to process stimuli that do not exist on Earth. Jake looked at Lyrelai, who was watching him with an expression he'd learned meant she was nervous but trying to hide it. This is important to you, he said. Very important. You cannot truly know me if you do not understand where I come from. Jake took a deep breath. Okay. Let's go to alien space. 2 hours later, he was regretting that decision. The transition, through what Lyrelai called a dimensional bridge, felt like being turned inside out while falling upward. When the sensation stopped, Jake found himself standing on what appeared to be a platform made of crystallized light, surrounded by the most beautiful and terrifying landscape he'd ever seen. Zilithia wasn't a planet in any sense Jake understood. It was more like a living dream. The sky shifted between colors that had no names, filled with floating islands connected by bridges of solid energy. The very air seemed to sing, and everything he looked at appeared to be made of some combination of organic matter and pure light. Oh God, he whispered, grabbing onto Lyrelai's arm for support. Breathe slowly, she said gently. Your mind is trying to process sensory input that does not exist in your dimensional space. It will stabilize. Jake closed his eyes and focused on breathing. When he opened them again, the landscape was still impossible, but his brain had apparently decided to accept it. Better? Lyrelai asked. I think so. This is where you grew up? This is the outer residential district of my family's domain. Would you like to see my childhood home? They traveled through the city using what Lyrelai called a flow path, which felt like surfing on a river of light. Jake tried not to look down at the vast distances below them and focused instead on the incredible architecture around them. Buildings that grew like living things, bridges that sang in harmony, gardens where the plants seemed to dance. Your people did all this? He asked. Over many thousands of years, yes. We shape our environment through collective consciousness and energy manipulation. Each structure is grown rather than built. It's incredible, but also kind of overwhelming. I understand. I felt similarly when I first experienced Earth. So much solid matter, so much separation between living things. It seemed very lonely. They arrived at what Lyrelai called her family's dwelling, though palace would have been more accurate. It was a sprawling structure that seemed to be made of crystallized music, with spires that reached toward the shifting sky and gardens that defied gravity. Princess Lyrelai, a voice called out in the singing language of the Zilithians. A figure approached them, smaller than Lyrelai but with similar features and skin that glowed like pearls. Jake, this is my youngest sister, Kythera, Lyrelai said. Kythera, this is Jake Martinez, the human I have been bonding with. Kythera circled Jake like a curious cat, making observations in rapid Zilithian. Jake's translation device was working, but she was speaking too fast for him to follow. She says you are smaller than she expected, but that your energy patterns are very interesting, Lyrelai translated. She also says you smell like coffee and anxiety. Great, I'm making a wonderful first impression. Actually, she finds it charming. Zilithians rarely experience anxiety, so she is fascinated by the emotional complexity. They spent the day touring Lyrelai's world, meeting her family and experiencing Zilithian culture firsthand. Jake learned that Zilithians could share memories and emotions directly through touch, that they considered music and mathematics to be the same thing, and that their entire society was built around the concept of harmony between all living things. It was beautiful and alien and wonderful, and by evening Jake was completely exhausted. "I can see why Scholar Zeph was worried about cultural adjustment," he said as they sat in Lyralay's private garden, watching 3 moons rise over the impossible landscape. "Is it too much?" she asked quietly. "It's a lot," Jake admitted. "But not too much, it's just, I can't imagine living here permanently. I don't think my brain could handle it." Lyralay nodded sadly. "I suspected as much. The sensory input alone would likely cause long-term psychological stress for humans, but that doesn't mean we can't make this work," Jake said quickly. "It just means we need to find a middle ground." "What do you mean?" Jake took her hand, marveling at how normal it felt despite everything that was alien about their situation. "I mean, maybe we don't have to choose between your world and mine. Maybe we can create something new." The solution came to Jake during their 3rd day on Zilithia, while he was watching Lyralay teach her young nephew how to make the crystal flowers in their garden sing different melodies. The boy was struggling with the concept, his small hands creating discordant notes that made the other plants wither slightly. "You are trying too hard," Lyralay told him gently. "Feel the flower's natural rhythm first, then add your own harmony to it." As Jake watched, the boy's expression changed from frustration to wonder. The crystal flower began to emit a soft, pure tone that blended perfectly with the garden's ambient music. "That's it," Jake said suddenly, standing up so fast that several nearby plants recoiled in surprise. "What is it?" Lyralay asked. "The answer to all of this." Jake began pacing, his excitement growing. "You don't force harmony, you find it. We've been thinking about this all wrong. I do not understand. Come with me. I need to talk to your father." An hour later, Jake found himself in the most intimidating situation of his life, standing before Emperor Thalnos of the Zilithian Empire, in what could only be described as a throne room made of living starlight. The Emperor was ancient even by Zilithian standards, his skin a deep blue silver that shifted like ocean waves, and his presence felt like standing next to a nuclear reactor. "You wish to propose an alternative to the traditional bonding arrangement," the Emperor said, his voice resonating through Jake's bones. "This is highly irregular." "With respect, Your Majesty, this entire situation is highly irregular," Jake replied, grateful that his voice wasn't shaking. "Your daughter and I come from completely different species, different dimensional spaces, different ways of understanding reality. The traditional approach isn't going to work." "And what approach do you suggest?" Jake took a deep breath. "A partnership. Not just between Lyralay and me, but between our peoples. Instead of one of us adapting to the other's world, we create something new. A bridge between our civilizations." Emperor Thalnos leaned forward slightly. "Explain." "Earth needs to advance technologically, but in a way that preserves what makes humanity unique. Zilithia is perfect and harmonious, but from what I've observed, that perfection comes at the cost of growth and change. What if we created a space where both could coexist?" "You are proposing a hybrid civilization?" "I'm proposing a collaborative one. Zilithian technology guided by human adaptability and creativity. Human innovation tempered by Zilithian wisdom and harmony." Princess Lyralay stepped forward. "Father, I believe Jake is suggesting we establish a permanent cultural exchange station, a space where both species could live and work together. Like a neutral zone," Jake added, "somewhere between Earth and Zilithia, where we could build something neither of our peoples could create alone." Emperor Thalnos was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes studying Jake with an intensity that made him want to hide behind Lyralay. "Such an endeavor would require unprecedented cooperation," the Emperor finally said. "Resources from both civilizations, volunteers from both species, and leadership capable of bridging 2 completely different ways of existence." "Yes, sir. And you believe you and my daughter could provide such leadership?" Jake looked at Lyralay, who gave him an encouraging nod. "I think we could learn to," he said. "Together." The Emperor stood, his massive form seeming to fill the crystalline chamber. "Ambassador Viridian, what is your assessment of this proposal?" Ambassador Viridian, who had been silently observing from the side of the chamber, stepped forward. "The concept has merit, Your Majesty. Our initial studies of human civilization suggest they would indeed benefit from guided technological advancement, while our own society has shown signs of cultural stagnation in recent centuries. Scholar Zeph, the psychological compatibility data supports the possibility of successful collaboration. Scholar Zeph reported. Both species show complementary strengths and weaknesses that could result in beneficial symbiosis. Emperor Thalnos turned back to Jake. And what of your own people? Would Earth's governments agree to such an arrangement? Jake felt a moment of panic. He hadn't even thought about the political implications on the human side. Honestly, I have no idea, he admitted. But I know my father managed to make contact with you using equipment he built in his garage. If one retired engineer can create a communication bridge between our civilizations, imagine what we could accomplish working together officially. You would need to convince your world leaders, the Emperor said. We would need to convince our world leaders, Jake corrected. This is a partnership, remember? For the first time since Jake had met him, Emperor Thalnos smiled. It was a terrifying expression that revealed teeth designed for a carnivorous diet. But somehow it was also oddly fatherly. Lyrelay, what is your opinion of this human's proposal? I believe it is brilliant, Lyrelay said without hesitation. And I believe Jake Martinez is exactly the kind of innovative thinker such a project would require. Very well, the Emperor said. I will authorize a preliminary feasibility study. You have one of your years to present a detailed proposal for this hybrid civilization, including political agreements from Earth's major powers and technical specifications for the neutral zone construction. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. Thank you, Your Majesty. Do not thank me yet, the Emperor warned. If you fail to deliver a viable proposal within the specified time frame, the arranged bonding will be dissolved and contact with Earth will be severed permanently. We won't fail, Jake said, hoping he sounded more confident than he felt. See that you do not. The fate of two civilizations now rests on your ability to make this partnership work. As they left the Emperor's presence, Jake realized the full magnitude of what he'd just committed to. Lyrelay, he said weakly, I think I may have just volunteered us to save both our worlds. Yes, she agreed cheerfully. Is this not exciting? Exciting is one word for it. Terrifying is another. Jake Martinez, Lyrelay said, stopping to face him directly. 3 weeks ago you were a human male living a quiet life of minimal importance. Now you are the co-leader of the most significant diplomatic project in galactic history. How does that feel? Jake considered the question seriously. A month ago his biggest worry had been quarterly reports and whether he'd remembered to pay his electric bill. Now he was engaged to an alien princess and somehow responsible for establishing peaceful relations between two civilizations. It feels like my real life just started, he said finally. Lyrelay smiled, her skin shifting to the warm golden hue he'd learned meant she was happy. Mine too, she said. So partner, shall we go save the galaxy? Let's do it, Jake said. And for the first time since this whole crazy adventure began, he felt like he might actually know what he was doing. He was wrong about that, but he was right about everything else that mattered. Convincing the leaders of Earth that aliens existed turned out to be easier than Jake had expected. Convincing them that humanity should enter into a formal alliance with said aliens was considerably more difficult. Let me get this straight, said President Williams, leaning back in her chair in the Oval Office while staring at the holographic display that Ambassador Viridian had conjured above the conference table. Your father built a radio antenna in his backyard that accidentally contacted an alien empire. And now you're engaged to their princess and proposing that we establish a joint civilization in space. That's a simplified version, but essentially accurate, Jake replied, trying not to fidget in his chair. Even after 6 months of diplomatic meetings, he still couldn't believe he was sitting in the White House. And you're certain this isn't an elaborate hoax? Ambassador Viridian gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show real-time images of Zilithian cities. I assure you, Madam President, this is quite real. Perhaps another demonstration would be helpful. Before the president could respond, Viridian touched a control on their wrist device. The conference room's lights dimmed, and suddenly the air filled with soft, harmonious music that seemed to come from everywhere at once. This is the sound of our capital city, Viridian explained. Every building, every garden, every pathway contributes to a collective symphony that has been growing for over 2,000 years. The president stared at the floating musical notation that accompanied the sound. Incredible. And you're saying that humans could learn to do this? Not exactly as we do, Lyrelay interjected. But humans have their own unique approaches to harmony creation. We believe that combining our methods could result in something entirely new. Secretary of Defense Morrison, who had been skeptical throughout the entire process, leaned forward. What assurances do we have that this isn't some kind of invasion strategy? How do we know you're not just waiting for us to lower our defenses? Jake had been expecting this question. Over the past 6 months, he'd learned more about military strategy and international diplomacy than he'd ever wanted to know. With respect, Mr. Secretary, Jake said, if the Zilithians wanted to invade Earth, they wouldn't need to trick us into cooperation. They have technology that makes our most advanced weapons look like stone tools. The young human speaks correctly, Viridian confirmed. If the Empire wished to claim Earth's resources, it would require approximately 14 standard time units. How long is that in human terms? President Williams asked. 6 of your hours, Lyrelai said quietly. Though conquest is antithetical to Zilithian philosophy, we have never taken a world by force. What do you do when you encounter hostile species? Morrison pressed. We avoid them, Viridian said simply. The galaxy is vast. There is no shortage of space for those who wish to live in peace. Dr. Sarah Chen, the president's science advisor, had been quietly studying the technical specifications that Scholar Zeph had provided. The energy source alone would revolutionize our entire civilization, she said. Clean, unlimited power that doesn't require any fuel source. We could end climate change, eliminate poverty, solve resource scarcity issues. All of that is possible, Lyrelai agreed, but it would require careful implementation. Sudden technological advancement without cultural preparation has destroyed civilizations before. Which is why we're proposing the gradual integration approach, Jake added. The neutral zone would serve as a testing ground. Small groups of humans and Zilithians living and working together, developing new technologies and social structures slowly, carefully. President Williams was quiet for several minutes, studying the documents spread across the table. Finally, she looked up. I need to consult with Congress and the United Nations. This is too big a decision for any one person to make. Of course, Jake said. We understand the process takes time. How much time do we have? The Emperor has given us until the end of this year to present a complete proposal, Lyrelai said. After that, the offer expires. That's only 6 months. Yes, ma'am. The president stood up. Then we'd better get to work. 3 weeks later, Jake found himself addressing a joint session of Congress, with Lyrelai and Ambassador Viridian flanking him on either side. The chamber was packed with representatives from every major nation on Earth in attendance. 6 months ago, Jake began, I was a nobody, middle management at a boring company, living in a small apartment, no particularly exciting prospects for the future. Today I'm standing before you as Earth's first diplomatic representative to an alien civilization, asking you to make a decision that will determine the course of human history. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Politicians, scientists, military leaders, journalists, all of them waiting to hear what he had to say. The choice before us is simple but not easy, he continued. We can choose isolation, maintaining our current trajectory and development path knowing that we are alone in the universe. Or we can choose partnership, opening ourselves to possibilities we can't even imagine yet. A representative from Japan raised her hand. Mr. Martinez, what guarantees do we have that humanity won't lose its essential character in this partnership? That's exactly why we're proposing the neutral zone approach, Jake replied. Slow integration, careful monitoring, preservation of human autonomy. We're not talking about surrender or assimilation. We're talking about growth. And if it doesn't work, called out a senator from Texas. If this partnership turns out to be a mistake, Lyrelai stepped forward, then we part as friends and both civilizations continue on their separate paths. But if it does work, if we succeed in creating something new together, the benefits to both our peoples would be immeasurable. The session lasted for 4 hours, with questions ranging from technical specifications to philosophical implications. By the end, Jake was exhausted, but hopeful. The vote, when it came 3 days later, was closer than he'd expected. 267 in favor, 168 against. Not exactly a mandate, Jake said to Lyrelai as they watched the results come in. But enough, she replied. Change never happens without resistance. The important thing is that it happens at all. The United Nations vote was even closer, passing by only 12 votes, but it passed. Phase 1 is complete, Ambassador Viridian announced as they returned to Jake's father's house, which had become the unofficial embassy for human-Zilithian relations. Now we must begin the real work. Which is? Jake asked. Building a space station capable of housing both species, developing integrated technologies, and creating the social structures necessary for a truly hybrid civilization. Jake looked at Lyreley, who was already pulling up holographic blueprints of the proposed station. You know, he said, when I woke up that Monday morning 6 months ago, I never imagined I'd end up as an architect of interstellar civilization. Do you regret it? Lyreley asked. Jake considered the question. His old life had been comfortable, predictable, safe. This new life was exciting, terrifying, and completely uncertain. Every day brought new challenges, new responsibilities, new ways to potentially mess up the future of two entire species. Not for a second, he said. Lyreley smiled, her skin shifting to that warm golden hue that meant she was happy. Good, she said, because the real adventure is just beginning. 1 year later, Jake stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. The space station was a marvel of combined human and Zilithian engineering, its crystalline spires growing from metallic foundations like flowers blooming from concrete. It housed 300 beings from both species and had become the most successful interspecies collaboration in galactic history. Still can't believe this is real sometimes, he said to Lyreley, who was standing beside him, her hand warm in his. I know what you mean, she replied. A year ago I was a princess with no purpose beyond ceremonial duties. Now I am co-director of the most important cultural exchange project in the Empire. Co-directors, Jake corrected with a smile. I'm still getting used to that part. Their wedding had been a diplomatic event that made headlines across both civilizations. The ceremony itself had been a beautiful blend of human and Zilithian traditions, held in the station's central garden, where earth roses grew alongside singing crystals from Lyreley's homeworld. Jake's father had cried through the entire thing, partly from joy and partly from pride in what his backyard antenna project had ultimately accomplished. Jake, Lyreley, you need to see this, called Dr. Chen, who had become the station's chief science officer. She was hurrying toward them with a tablet in her hands and an expression of barely contained excitement. What is it? Jake asked. The agricultural team just achieved something incredible. The hybrid growing chambers we developed are producing yields 3 times higher than Earth's best farmland, while requiring 90% less water and no chemical fertilizers. Lyreley studied the data. The Zilithian bioharmonics combined with human selective breeding techniques. Exactly. But that's not even the best part. Dr. Chen pulled up another screen. The plants are naturally producing compounds that could revolutionize human medicine. We're talking about cures for diseases we've been fighting for centuries. Jake felt a familiar thrill of accomplishment. Every week brought new breakthroughs like this, innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Any word from the expansion committee? He asked. That's actually why I came to find you. We just received approval for 3 more stations. The Joint Council wants to accelerate the program. Jake and Lyreley exchanged a look. The success of Harmony Station had exceeded everyone's expectations, and now both governments were eager to expand the program. 5 more stations were planned over the next 5 years, each one focused on different aspects of human-Zilithian cooperation. We're going to need more people, Jake said. Already working on it, Dr. Chen replied. The application process for both species is completely overwhelmed. Apparently a lot of beings want to be part of building the future. As Dr. Chen hurried off to continue her work, Jake turned back to the observation window. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, but he knew that down there, massive changes were already beginning. Zilithian energy technology was being slowly integrated into human infrastructure. Human music and literature were spreading throughout the Zilithian Empire. Both civilizations were evolving, becoming something new. Incoming message from Earth, announced the station's AI, which was itself a hybrid of human and Zilithian technology. Your father wishes to speak with you, Jake. Jake touched the communication panel and his father's face appeared on the holographic display. He looked older than when this whole adventure had started, but also happier. Hey, son. How are things up there? Good, Dad. Really good.
How are things down there?
Well, I just finished installing a Zilithian power cell in Mrs. Henderson's house. Her electric bill is going to be about $3 a month from now on. She's very excited, Jake laughed. His father had become something of a celebrity on Earth. the man whose hobby had changed the course of human history. He now worked with a team of human and Zalithian engineers, helping to safely integrate alien technology into Earth's infrastructure. Any regrets, Dad? His father was quiet for a moment. Son, I spent 40 years as an electrical engineer fixing other people's problems. Now I'm helping to build a better future for the entire human race. The only thing I regret is not starting this project sooner. I love you, Dad. Love you too, son. Take care of that wife of yours. She's good for you. After the call ended, Jake found Lorelei in their quarters working on the specifications for the next station. She had adapted to human customs remarkably well, though she still insisted on keeping the room temperature at what Jake considered Arctic levels. Cold? She asked, noticing him shivering. I'm fine, he lied. Lorelei smiled and adjusted the climate controls. I forget that humans are more sensitive to temperature variations. It's okay. I'm getting used to it. Jake sat down beside her. So how do you think we're doing? Really? With the project? Better than anyone expected? I meant with us. Lorelei set down her tablet and turned to face him fully. Jake Martinez. 6 months ago, you asked me to marry you using a human custom that involved presenting me with a crystallized carbon formation while kneeling on one leg. Knee. Kneeling on one knee. Yes. And when I said yes, you performed what I believe humans call a fist pump, and then immediately apologized for celebrating while I was still trying to process the emotional significance of the moment. Jake felt his cheeks reddening. That sounds about right. It was the most awkward and endearing proposal in Zalithian history. My sisters still ask me to tell the story at family gatherings. So that's a good thing? Jake, Lorelei said, taking his hands in hers. In Zalithian culture, we have a saying. True harmony comes not from two voices singing the same note, but from two different voices finding a melody together. That's beautiful. We are very different voices, you and I. You are chaotic and innovative and emotionally impulsive. I am structured and logical and cautious. By all rational analysis, we should be incompatible. Jake's heart sank a little, but together we create something beautiful, something neither of our species has ever heard before. Lorelei's skin shifted to that warm golden hue. I love you, Jake Martinez. Not despite our differences, but because of them. I love you too, Jake said, pulling her close. Even if you do keep our room cold enough to preserve meat? Lorelei laughed, that musical sound that still made his heart skip beats. I will try to remember to adjust the temperature. And I'll try to remember that when you're being logical and cautious, you're not being cold, you're being careful with something important. See? Harmony. That night, as Jake lay in bed listening to Lorelei's quiet breathing beside him, he thought about the chain of events that had brought him here. His father's curiosity, his own willingness to take a chance, Lorelei's courage in reaching across the vast distance between their species to find something worth building together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were still politicians on both sides who opposed the alliance, technical problems that seemed impossible to solve, and the constant pressure of knowing that their success or failure would affect the future of two entire civilizations. But tonight, Jake was content to lie next to his alien princess wife in their space station home, watching the stars through their bedroom window and marveling at how much his life had changed since that morning when his coffee maker exploded. His father had been right about one thing. When opportunity knocked, you had to be ready to answer the door, even if that opportunity came in the form of an accidental alien contact and an arranged marriage to someone from another dimension, especially then. As Jake drifted off to sleep, he could hear the faint harmonic hum of the station around them, human and Zalithian technology working together to create something that had never existed before. It sounded like music. It sounded like the future. It sounded like home.